OpenAI's O1 is probably the best AI model available today, but it is so different than every other AI model, there's a good chance people aren't using it right. So today I'm going to be covering exactly how the model works, how to use it in your day-to-day, and the workflow that I use that helps me maximize O1 because it is a crazy good model. So the first thing you have to know is that O1 is a very different model. It doesn't work the same way that ChatGPT does, that Claude, Gemini, any of those models. And the reason that is different is because they are thinking models. And they do something that essentially is very similar to sort of how humans think. It's called chain of thought. Now, previously, chain of thought was essentially a way for the models to kind of think, and you could do that by prompting them. You could actually do that with any model. You can say, before you answer, think step by step. And this technique was used a lot by, different companies to make the models smarter. And a lot of the times, whether it was Anthropic, whether it was Google, the models performed significantly better on the tests they took when they sort of had to reiterate what the problem was, what was the kind of context of the question, and they actually found that they scored better. Now, so OpenAI did something very different. Now, on the left, you see here that they asked, they gave it this cipher and they said, think step by step. And this is an example of, sort of chain of thought prompting. It breaks the problem down, it examines the words, it tries to, decode the phrase, and it kind of goes and sort of thinks a bit, but it's not actually able to answer the problem. But the thing about O1 is that they trained it on these sort of step by step thinking, and so much so that now, if you go to ChatGPT and you use it, it'll show you the chain of thought. So here, in this example, it thought for 5 seconds. And actually what's happening under the hood is what OpenAI wanted to do was not show the exact sort of thought process. So they give you like a summarized version, but the idea is the same. It starts to go through this thinking process. It analyzes the request. And there's a bunch of thoughts, and you can go down. And then by sort of recursively going down this like thinking loop, is actually able to solve the problem. So that's pretty much it. That is the big thing about these sort of thinking models, and what OpenAI calls it is sort of inference time compute. The more the model thinks, the better it has a chance of solving that problem. So imagine in a year from now, you kind of give a model a problem saying, hey, I want you to do a very in-depth analysis on something, right? If you ask a human that, well, a human's not going to do it in 35 seconds, right? They're going to take maybe a day. And that's sort of the direction that we're going to see a lot of the smarter reasoning models go down the path. And what I've learned is that they work very differently. You have to prompt, whether it's even O1 and O1 preview, you got to give them objectives and goals, not so much as, hey, your chat GPT, let me ask you a couple of back and forths. All right, let's talk about O1 Mini. Now, O1 Mini is actually a very strong coding model. However, I'll get to this in a second. It hasn't been in my experience, but based off of what OpenAI kind of, put on their site about how it has, lower inference costs, it has better, problem solving on code forces problems, something, some other things like cybersecurity. Basically, it's just a smaller version of the O1 model, and it's a lot faster. And I initially started to use O1 a lot for coding because I thought that's what it was good at, but I started to realize that it made a lot of very tiny mistakes, and I'll show you here in a second. It just made, here I have a prompt that said, give me a backend API. I don't know, I just gave it a random thing. And it's going to go and it's going to think through about this. And it's just going to give you a giant corpus of text. The problem is at first, this is great. You're like, oh my God, it's giving me everything I need. It's giving me all the requests. The problem is when you look into the details, the tiny little things with O1 Mini, it if you don't know what's going on, if there's a tiny mistake made, you cannot go back and fix it. It's like, look how much text this has given me. I'm not iterating on the problem with O1 Mini. I'm giving it the problem and I'm expecting to have a fully working solution with no bugs. Now that's a problem. It is hard with these models because they're still not good enough to what I like to call one shot the problem. It's not like I'm talking to a senior developer in this use case, which then means that if I want to go iterate on this at any given moment, if I want to fix something, I want to go back and kind of give it a comment. It's actually really annoying because if I say, well, there is a small bug with the Redis queue. I don't know, I'm just making something up. It's gonna sit here, it's gonna think, and first of all, I don't even know like where it's gonna kind of think that the bug is, right? There is no back and forth. So what I've noticed when I was doing it for coding, but even I was using it for writing, I was asking it various problems like it was just easier for me to go to, a GPT-4 or a Claude and just sort of sit there and ask it questions and kind of iterate on it. So if you are looking at using O1 Mini, my recommendation is that it's not good enough to just one-shot problems every single time unless it's like a coding puzzle. That's the only thing I really have seen that OpenAI talks about it. You're better off starting a little bit and building like a document with GPT-4, iterating on a couple of things, and then once you have a very good idea of like, okay, this is what I want to go down, then you would bring that to a one mini. But to be honest, for the most part, I have found very little use cases so far for Mini outside of giving it a very large document, and I'm saying, restructure it, rewrite it, or if I'm giving it, let's say a large, a blog or something like that, and I'm saying, hey, I want you to take these things and edit it. It's actually very good at that. Everything else, I've sort of moved away from O1 Mini. I know there's a lot of use cases, but for me personally, just was not good. But let's go into what I am starting to really like, which is O1 Preview. Now, O1 Preview is a very good model. It took me a little bit to sort of figure out how to prompt it, how to work with it, but now that I've kind of gotten the right workflow, it is fantastic. And I'm really excited because, again, this is just the preview model for the full version. The way that I like to think of O1, again, I'm not giving it one-off questions, these basic types of things. I'm building context for whatever problem I need. And once I have all of the context ready, whether that's with Claude, whether that's with GPT-4, I come to O1. So I'll show you that workflow in a second, but I actually wanted to show you a real world use case of how we at Auto use O1 and how it differs from Claude. So for us here, so for Auto, what I was doing was that I wanted to sort of come up with a couple more templates. And so here I had like a bunch of templates or AutoGrid. So for those of you guys who don't know, it's sort of like a platform where you can automate manual research with AI agents. But I was trying to come up with a bunch of templates and sort of do some more writing around it and ideation, right? We have a bunch of templates on our site, and I wanted to sort of have an AI help me come up with more templates, like branch out the ideas and potential use cases that I could dive into. So what I did was originally I kind of sat here with Claude, I sat here with GPT-4 and kind of asked it a couple of questions about that. What I would do is I would go into my database and I would grab all of the content of the table. So here I actually went and grabbed it. I pasted here, and it helped me come up and with a few ICPs and more templates based on this table for AutoGrid. So I would come into it and say something like this. Now I actually had more content, but for the sake of this, I would say go for it. Okay. So I'd come in here and I would say come up with some things. Now, Claude's not bad, like a couple more templates, features, but what you start to notice is like, it's just not there. Now, what I would just literally, the simplest thing is I would just come here, do the same thing, and I would come grab this with O1 and I'd say, hey, help me come up with a few more templates based on this for AutoGrid. Now, again, I will say this is not the right approach. This is just for the sake of this example is you probably want to do a little bit of that context building, which I mentioned first, but we'll let this run. Now, it gives me, okay, so, small businesses, mid-market companies. Now we'll compare that again to Claude 3.5, IT providers, like it says here, it gives me some pain points, but like the level of the level of depth between these two, right? Needs pain points, need for project management, ticketing integration, I guess. So limited budget. Do these sound like pain points to you? But now let's go into here, okay, budget-friendly options, which is, okay, makes a lot of sense. Ability to add users and features as they grow, integration with other tools, custom workflows, automations, willing to invest more for additional value. So, like right off the bat, I didn't do anything. I didn't change anything. The same prompt, the same everything, and already I get to me, what feels more thorough and insightful answer that I can actually get and pick up and use in the day-to-day. Propose features. So, like, yeah, it actually gives me the columns, which by the way, I didn't mention, for us where our company basically, has a bunch of columns within a table and each of these columns are different fields. Claude didn't really give me those. It sort of like kind of highlighted some features where, O1 goes into depth and gives me the type of column. Like, by the way, like for you guys who don't know, like this is a very large piece of text. There's a lot of things happening in this, and I didn't explain to O1 what was going on, but it was able to infer a lot of that, gives me the next steps. And here, Claude does a good job, but its ability to sort of one-shot problems is unmatched. And this was just like a quick example that I didn't have time to curate because you can make this way better with the workflow that I'm about to show you. What I like to do is sort of create a context builder. Now, what does that mean? It means I want to get all of the information I need in as in-depth as possible to O1 Preview. The best way to do that isn't by using O1 Preview. It's using ChatGPT, using Claude, and kind of coming here, chatting with it, and iterating and building with, ChatGPT. So here I just have this giant piece of text that I, asked it about. I'm saying, I'm just going to correct this. It's auto grid. And I said, hey, I give it a quick explanation of what we do. And I say, I want to help, have you help me create the thing. Now, what it's going to do is it's going to sort of have this back and forth conversation with me. You can use voice mode for this. Voice mode is so much faster than chatting with ChatGPT with text. You can sit there, talk with it, because I actually voice noted this piece of text. Now it's going to come in here and it's going to ask me a couple of questions. It's going to say, what's the core purpose? Blah, 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 blah. Again, I would say that the fastest way to do this is just to go in with voice mode and talk with it, explain what you're doing. So my use case is I have my company, I have my product, I have my templates, and I want to, learn more about the various use cases. What are the different ICPs? I want to learn about their problems so that I can make a better product, make a, sell better, market better, etc. That's my high level goal. Now, how I'm doing that is I'm coming to ChatGPT and I'm trying to make sure that we build the right context. Remember, ChatGPT, these guys don't know about your company. They don't know what you're doing. So if you just say, hey, can you help me do this? It's going to try to infer from it. Now, there are companies that let you upload your website link, but let me tell you, that doesn't help. You have to sit here and copy paste the largest amount of text that you can so that you can build a giant, what I like to call report, whatever you want to call it, a document that has every single thing that you could give to someone where if they read through and through, they would know exactly everything they need to know about your company. The reason this is important, because again, these models are very good at learning from the context that you give it. So come in here, ask it some questions, have a couple of back and forths, and build a giant document. To illustrate why you need to build context for O1 and the workflow that I use, I made a little diagram here, okay? So you have your context building phase, you bring it in from the voice, from your website URL, build a scraper, scrape all the content from your website, blogs, everything, internal data that you might have. Okay, that's phase one. I'm context building, right? I'm not giving any of this stuff to O1 or O1 Mini. Maybe you could use Mini here. Then we go to step two, refining the ideas, the documents, right? We likely have a bunch of unstructured information with their website URL, internal data, spreadsheets, a bunch of, ideas from the voice, all kind of, our goal is to turn that into a very clear document. It doesn't need to be short, but it just needs to be refined. Now, again, you can use O1, you can use Claude, it doesn't matter. But the goal is to refine the thinking process that we had initially so that we can have a very clear document. Imagine that you're going to give this document to someone, and if they read it, they're going to know everything and every tiny detail about your company. That's the second step. The final step. This is the step that's where you can come to O1. You can say, please, O1, you are so smart. Please make my company $1 billion. Here is this giant PDF, whatever. It's going to be text. And you're going to give it to O1. And what it's going to do is it's going to take its time. It's going to reason through all of the things that your company has done. And it's going to reason through your thoughts that you might have had on the task. And it's going to take maybe, 30 seconds. And it's going to be able to synthesize something that is very, very, very useful. You come here and then you give it the prompt, you give it the goal slash objective. You say, I want X outcome. Here is all of the relevant information. You have to build that context for O1 so that it can go out and do that. Now, in the future, this might change because, in all likelihood, what's probably going to happen is that the model is going to be so good that it could pull in the right pieces of context, right? This is going to become more agentic. And I'm guarantee you that OpenAI is going to do this. But for now, the best way I found to maximize O1 so that it can literally do high level tasks like this is to use this workflow, bring it to O1, and it's not perfect, but it does a really, really good job. Okay, that's it. That is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. That's sort of my workflow, how I like to think about O1. I'm super excited to see where this model is going to go in the next like 6 months because this is just the preview version. And it's going to be able to support a lot more things. But overall, hopefully you enjoyed it. See you in the next one. Peace.